The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a Hoop Ball presentation, also brought to you by our partners at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company, hawaiianisles.com, the website at HI Kona Coffee on Twitter. Getting your day started with little aloha. So maybe I should have said aloha, everybody. I'm Dan Besbris, at Dan Besbris on Twitter, if you'd like to give me a follow. You guys know the drill. It's DFS day. It's Wednesday. That means we got the marvelous Mike Apotria coming up in just a few minutes, but I thought that it might be easier, and I did this last week also with minimal fanfare. Instead of doing the feel free, if you really must, fast forward to the 32-minute mark, whatever. We'll just do the season-long stuff first, and then we can do the DFS stuff after that. And the season-long stuff is really fun right now. There was a stretch there, the dog days, where there wasn't a whole lot changing. We had a handful of things we were keeping kind of one eye on, but right now, there are serious implications in fantasy. And this Tuesday, 5 games, though they may be, there were 3 of those 5 games where we were really locked in on what was gone. Lakers, Hawks, Magic, Pelicans, and Spurs, Grizzlies. Those games were loaded with fantasy implications. And we're going to break all of those down now with thoughts, with ideas, there's going to be some hypothesizing that goes on today's show because we didn't see everything, but we have way more data now than we had at this point yesterday. So I think the best thing to do is just to kind of dive right in, give ourselves maximum amount of time to talk about this stuff. Talk a bit about the DFS contest, obviously, we got coming up later today. We're trying to set a new record for combatants in our DFS contest, but we got plenty of time to tell you about that later on today's podcast. I want everybody to get in there. Give it one try at the very least. If you haven't done it yet, get in there. Have a little bit of fun, and maybe you win. Maybe you take home a couple of bucks. I don't know. I can't make any guarantees. It's not that easy. Frankly, I lose every week. So just don't do what I do. How about that? There's your best advice. Don't do what I do in DFS. Do what I do in season long, and you'll be in okay shape. DFS, you'll get slammed. I miss by 20 points literally every single week. Lakers, Hawks. We knew this was going to be a tough one. I thought the Lakers would eke this thing out, but I knew it was going to be tight right from start to finish. Lakers defensively have been very poor. Both teams fell apart in the fourth quarter. Nobody could score. The game slowed down, and there was every available opportunity for LA to win this game. From a fantasy standpoint, this was a game where, to me, the Lakers actually missed Lonzo Ball quite a bit. He's the perfect guy to deploy on someone like Trae Young. I know they used Brandon Ingram on him for a bit, and Trae did have 22 and 14, but it took him 19 shots to get to that point. He also had 6 turnovers. So it wasn't like he was a hyper-efficient ball game. But, again, Atlanta, especially early in this ball game, they got what they wanted. And the third quarter in particular, they were especially strong. But we don't need to get into the semantics of that. That's something reserved for Laker fandom. From a fantasy standpoint, on the Lakers side, Reggie Bullock played 35 minutes in his second game in LA. He had 15-5 with 2 steals, a block, and 3 3-pointers on 6 out of 11 shooting. It's not a super fun fantasy line, but it is a very productive one. So I don't think you're totally writing him off at this point. Reggie Bullock is very much in the discussion for a guy you should consider having on your fantasy team. And we've talked about it on the podcast. I'm not super into it yet. We'll find out obviously more about Josh Hart and Lonzo Ball. What does that mean for the minutes on this team? But, KCP only saw 25 minutes, so Bullock jumped him quickly, and it tells you how badly the Lakers needed shooting, that they could bring in a guy who'd never played a game with this team, and immediately he jumps to the top of the depth chart for that small forward / shooting guard kind of whatever you call it, position battle. He played the second highest minute total on the team behind only LeBron James. KCP had a decent ball game, but you're not buying into it. Kuzma, obviously, he's fine. Brandon Ingram, he's actually been making some free throws lately, but he does have still a relatively limited fantasy game. Rajon Rondo was better in this one. He doubled his minutes from that very slow last ball game. And then JaVale McGee had horrible foul issues and just never got back into the ball game late. They went small, which you can get away with against Atlanta because they have no real inside presence at the center position. They can either go with John Collins, who's a leaper, or Dwayne Dedmon, who's solid in size, but he's not a post move guy. So that's the Lakers side. To me, it's keep watching Reggie Bullock. If you want to go grab him, that's fine. I just think there's more exciting guys out there. I wouldn't be surprised if he got picked up in a bunch of spots from this ball game. I don't know that it's a guy I'm sprinting out to grab when it seems like this is probably a best case scenario for him. He made his shots, good percentages in this game. 3 3-pointers. That's probably more towards the upper part of what he's going to be looking at. And the numbers are going to get harder as guys come back because it's just he's not at the top of the pecking order. And the steals and blocks right now, he has 3 of each in 2 games with the Lakers. That's not sustainable for him. That's just not his fantasy game. He got almost none of those with the Detroit Pistons, and so that'll more than likely level off as well. So decent, but not a sprint to the wire and grab kind of guy. On the Atlanta side, we're wondering who might benefit with Jeremy Lin being bought out and then signed by the Toronto Raptors. I had 2 theories. One was Kent Bazemore. The other was Taurean Prince. And I would venture to say that in sort of trial run number 1, it was Taurean Prince who had the better ball game post Jeremy Lin. He just was a little more engaged. He took the 3rd most shots on the team behind Trey and John Collins, and that's the way I hope it will be. Bazemore, not so much. He still only played 16 minutes in this ball game. Yes, he had a 3-pointer, a steal, and 2 blocks, but 16 minutes just isn't enough. It's not enough. Even though his usage was good, you need him over 20, and I don't think it's going to happen. So put him now distinctly on the chopping block. This was the game for me that was going to kind of make or break whether I was going to stick with it for a little bit of a longer haul or look for somebody else that maybe is on the rise a little bit. And so I'm now moving towards the looking for someone on the rise part of that discussion. Taurean Prince, he certainly bought himself some more time on your fantasy team. He's going to be able to knock down a lot of 3-pointers. That's his game. No turnovers. That was a nice key in this one. A block. He's usually going to get you some steals. Nice to see him grab a handful of rebounds, playing a decent number of minutes. I liked what I saw from him in this ball game, but he does still need to prove himself over a few games in a row. Orlando and New Orleans. This was a weird one for so many reasons. Number 1, it was a 30-point blowout by the road team. Gave out the Atlanta Hawks as the play of the day. I did an appearance on the Vegas Sports and Information Network on Sirius XM radio, and so I looked smart for a day, and that was cool. But the point of this is not necessarily the gambling wager. Number 1, Jonathan Isaac is just a freaking beast. I love that he took 18 shots. I don't care that he missed a bunch of them. 20 points, 7 rebounds, 3 blocked shots. He's a freight train, man, and he's coming down the tracks. And this is a great matchup, obviously, too, against a defenseless New Orleans Pelicans team. Couple of notes, however, on that New Orleans side. Before the game, we learned Jahlil Okafor was not only playing, but starting alongside Anthony Davis. And I think Okafor is a must-add player right now. I am totally 100% changing my tune on this guy. I know that on this podcast before I said I think Anthony Davis is going to play out the string, and I think that's going to crush Jahlil Okafor. Number 1, I don't know what the hell's going on with Anthony Davis right now. He may or may not play out the string. He's playing right now, and Okafor still started and logged 29 minutes in a blowout loss. That's foolproof at that point, which seems fairly insane. I will recognize that that's absolutely batty, but you guys know me. I was as down on Okafor as anybody. But this, to me, is a sign that they want him playing. If they're going to play him alongside AD, play AD at the 4, and let Jahlil Okafor. He was second on the team behind, or third on the team behind Tim Frazier and Kenrick Williams in minutes played in this ball game. Ahead of Julius Randle, ahead of Drew Holiday, ahead of Etuan Moore. Things are weird in New Orleans, but they actually think they have something in this weird sort of svelte new Okafor in their wide open, nobody plays defense anyway sort of game. And for a guy who can't play really any defense, this is perfect. So I am officially stamping it here on this show. I am changing sides on Jahlil Okafor. It's not that anybody really convinced me, because I think what our initial inclinations were correct. AD came back. Okafor was hurt. It seemed like he was just going to take his spot, but now they're going tandem bicycle style. And it's not like they needed to start 2 7-footers. The Magic have Vucevic at center. Okay, fine, traditional big man. But Aaron Gordon, who's like a 6'8", rangy power forward with explosive jumping ability, he's not Taj Gibson. He's not Derek Favors. You don't have to start a giant 4 in that spot. And certainly AD could have handled Vooch if they so desired. So this, to me, is a big thing. I think when Elfrid Payton comes back, and it'll raise a couple more questions on exactly what they're doing. My guess would be that might actually displace Kenrich Williams. They go back to the Elfrid, Drew, Etuan 1, 2, and 3, which they used for most of the year. By the way, with people getting shipped out, someone like Etuan Moore, who's always hovering in that top 125 range, he could actually get a top 100 bump going forward as well. But forget him for now. He had a nice ball game. He shot the ball well. It's always going to be tough for him to get over the hump because he doesn't do much besides score and hit some three-pointers. Darius Miller, not super trustworthy, especially now that he and Kenrich Williams seem to be getting squeezed into that small forward bucket. But man, I can't believe that this is happening, but they really want Okafor playing big center minutes, even with AD around. So he's a stop-what-you're-doing and add kind of guy. He's basically on waivers in every single one of my leagues, and I've gone out and I've grabbed him anywhere that I can. I don't know that he's going to be putting up big enough scoring numbers on a night-to-night basis, but I don't care because the rebounds are going to be there. He's going to tumble into some blocked shots. You know how they take a little leeway with their scorekeeping. Defensive numbers are always massive for the Pelicans. They like to get out and do that. The way they play lends itself to it. Little fingertip blocks. They get credit for those bad boys. So he's to me is a must-add, and maybe, despite the fact we had other fun stuff happening, he might be the story of the night for me, despite going for 8 and 7 with 2 steals. I mean, they just got run in this ball game, but if this is a competitive basketball game, he's playing another 5 or 6 minutes, and he was bad and put up this line. That's really intriguing, and it shoots him almost all the way to the top of the centers that might be available in your league list that we have running at all times over here. So we'll probably put out a little bit of an update on that bad boy. Keeping an eye, of course, on guys like Julius Randle, Drew Holiday. Anthony Davis is obviously the other story from this ballgame. It's not that Etuan Moore's minutes are ramping up. That's a side story. It's Anthony Davis. He played 24 minutes of completely disinterested basketball. He's 1 out of 9 from the field. He did still have 3 blocked shots, but this is a massive bummer, and it's bad for a lot of reasons. It's bad for a lot of reasons. They have another game before the All-Star break. They host the Oklahoma City Thunder on Thursday. That game is going to tell us a lot about what the rest of the season might look like. If Anthony Davis comes out and puts together another performance like this one, if they even let him play on Thursday, and it seems like they have to, if he comes out and he just plays a lackluster, doesn't give a hoot game, I'm not sure they let him play the rest of the season. I think they might start taking the penalty just to keep that from happening, because the distraction level of what he did in this ballgame is the kind of thing that makes it worse to play him. And it's why, by the way, I was actually kind of bullish, and you guys know this. I thought, if you're middle of the pack and you want to make a move, you trade for Anthony Davis and see what happens. It looked like you might have caught fire or caught lightning in a bottle with those 2 games over the weekend. This one is a very bad omen. I thought he would play well enough to not draw a ton of attention. That was my expectation. I thought, you know what? He's forcing the league to play him when... He's forcing the team, I should say. The league is forcing the team to play him when they want to shut him down and keep him safe for a trade scenario. He's going to want to do just enough to not get hurt, have some fun, be competitive, get some cheers from the hometown fans so he doesn't go out as the massive villain. And then this game happened. This is the game that turns him back into the villain again. And that's a really bad sign because it makes me think there's going to be a little bit of a scorn game going on, and you don't want that. You can't panic at this point. After a ball game like this one, can't sell them and get much. I'm seeing a lot of people out there getting offers of other first-round guys. Those were offers that you should have taken if they came at you after he played well in 2 games just to get out from under the risk. If somebody's still sending you top 40 guys, don't do it. It's not enough. At a certain point, you just have to ride it. And that might be the point we're at right now, in between this ball game and Thursday's game, at the very least. So that's a very scary proposition with Anthony Davis, and we'll be watching it like a hawk the next time around. Boston wins in Philadelphia. Now the perfect 3-0 against the Sixers this year. I thought that Philly would have a weird step-back game. They've had life too easy their first games with Tobias Harris. You knew Boston was going to come in peeved about blowing giant leads to the Lakers and the Clippers in their last 2 ball games. No Kyrie Irving. They ratcheted up. Boston got a giant game from Al Horford, who always plays well against these key guys like Ben Simmons, like Joel Embiid. His defensive brains, his IQ at the he's just, I know that Kyrie Irving is the best player on that team, but they are hot garbage without Al Horford. He's their everything. We got a big game out of Gordon Hayward. Popped up out of nowhere for that one. Jason Tatum played well. Marcus Morris played well. You never really know exactly who the guy is when someone goes down. Rozier should have been the easy one, and he didn't play particularly well. And then on the other side, Embiid cranked it up after a slow first half. Jimmy Butler had a decent ball game. J.J. Redick was solid. Ben Simmons is really struggling over his last couple of weeks. He needs that all-star break. He looks, to me, a bit tired, but you're not panicking on any of these guys. And you're starting to see, I think, in this one where the Tobias Harris stuff could start to bite into his numbers a little bit. But that's not one of the games that I wanted to laser focus on. That was a passing game. The other big one, the other one where, fantasy fortunes were changed, was Memphis and San Antonio. And the question is, how much? What does it all mean, man? Well, let's start with the easy one. Number one, San Antonio desperately needs Derek White back. The fact that they beat Memphis by 1 point in this game tells you everything you need to know about that team's lack of punch without Derek White. Rudy Gay looked good. Patty Mills had his weirdo, explosion game, and Davis Bertans played better. LMA was decent. Bryn Forbes was not. Bellinelli was slow. DeMar DeRozan had a terrible ball game. They need Derek White. He was their spark plug. Everything was going great for the Spurs when he was healthy, and if, as Pop suggests, he's back after the All-Star break, he's a guy that should be picked up and stashed as well, because at this point now you're really only holding for 1 ball game. Easy. Pick him up, not playing tomorrow, or whenever the hell they got their next ball game. They're into the All-Star break now. So you're not even missing a ball game with him. You might be dropping a guy that's playing between now and February 22nd. That's where you might be losing it. So he's a must-stash at this point. Even if it takes him a couple games to get ramped up, he was coasting. He was a top 75 guy before he got hurt. So he's another big storyline. The Memphis side was a mishmash of weirdness. No Slow-Mo, no Mike Conley. So we don't really know exactly what's the timeline there, especially for Slow-Mo. The shoulder thing, he saw a specialist, then he saw another specialist. We have no report on it. Conley is out with an illness. So by all accounts, he could be back before the break. I doubt it. Probably right afterwards. So what we saw in this game is not necessarily what we'll get going forward in the backcourt. Avery Bradley played 38 minutes and scored 33 points while taking roughly 2 times as many shots as anyone else on the team. Fine, you can take a lot of shots if you're making all of them. 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, 3 3-pointers. He's going to get picked up in some leagues, but it's not going to be by me. I need to see this happen a couple of times. He's already been added in 2 leagues that I'm in, but by the time I've recorded this show late on Tuesday evening, but I'm eyeballing other guys. Avery Bradley is not my priority in this ballgame because I think when Conley comes back, he and DeLon Wright are going to be the ones fighting each other to not get squeezed. And then if Kyle Anderson, Slow-Mo, ever comes back, then you look at a guy like Justin Holiday as a potential squeeze, because the front court suddenly looks a little bit safer. And how great was this? Jonas Valanciunas playing his first basketball in 2 months, goes for 23 and 10 in his Grizzlies debut. It was as good as we could have ever hoped. I didn't start him anywhere because I figured this was going to be, 12 minutes, easing him in, long layoff. I know the conditioning was fine because it was a hand injury, but figured they'd ease him in, play some games with his new teammates, maybe ramp him up slowly. I didn't start him because I thought if I leave him on my injured list, I can keep the other guy that I've got that's healthy, that's playing, today and tomorrow or something like that. And Valanciunas supposedly is resting the second half of the back-to-back. But I'll tell you what, if we get word that he's playing tomorrow or that he's playing in the back-to-back coming out of the All-Star break, oh, you better believe the engines are getting fired up, friends. I don't think he's ever going to get up to 30 minutes. I just don't think that's the way he's built. He's a gigantic human being, and you trot those guys out for that long, they're going to end up getting really beat up and tired. But if we can even get him up around 24 minutes a game, you're talking about a top 60 guy or better. He is locked and loaded, and officially now he moves in front of whoever else we've been talking about as the biggest winner of the fantasy trade deadline. He's ready to roll. And you can see he's invigorated. He's on a team where he knows he's got a chance to play his way into more minutes than he could in Toronto. This is Valanciunas when he cares. When he cares, he's a monster. On the glass, around the rim, he could be a high-volume 60% shooter the rest of the way. I mean, this is going to be a guy that could be a real fantasy difference maker, and that's awesome. DeLon Wright, 4, 8, and 6. He didn't take that many shots, and he also didn't make that many of the ones he took. I mean, yeah, you could make the argument to hang on to him because he does have a nice sort of steals, blocks, triples, fantasy stat set. He's very good across the board. I am genuinely concerned, though, that if this team ever gets healthy, Slow-Mo and Conley again are the two big-name guys that are on the shelf, that he, Bradley, Justin Holiday, these guys are all going to start getting pushed a little bit. And that's going to render basically all of them unusable. But that's why I think we need a little bit more data. If you want to go out and make the move, I get it. If you want to drop DeLon Wright because his line wasn't that big, or if you want to add him because he played 34 minutes, I see reasonable arguments on both sides of this. To me, I'm more focused on the guys that feel like easier predictability. The Dario Saric's right now. The fact that Jahlil Okafor can give you big-time center production where it does appear as though the narrative there in New Orleans is that they want him playing decent-sized minutes. If they're going to jam him in, this is real, like square peg, round hole kind of thing, alongside Anthony Davis, then they must really want him playing down the stretch. So, that's a situation I love. I love Valanciunas. These big men are surfacing. The guards in Memphis, you basically need to add all of them and then drop the ones that don't pan out. And I don't know many of us that have that many available roster spots, particularly when two or three other more obvious pickups are just sitting out there waiting to be had. And if you want to talk about guards, Derek White is a much safer grab than any of those guards in Memphis. And he's available in some leagues because of injury. No news is good news kind of thing with Utah and Golden State. Klay Thompson sprained his finger. It was gross, but he continued to play, which is, whatever. And Warriors and Jazz had, predictably, a relatively competitive game. That was kind of what we expected from that mess, but not much in the way of fantasy stuff there. Wednesday, we move along to the next phase of this thing. This is sort of the big near finale before the All-Star break. There's a couple of games coming up on Thursday. But Wednesday is the Whopper. There's 12 games on Wednesday night. Brooklyn is in Cleveland. A ton of stuff to watch again. The Cavaliers, we're watching to see what's going on with Kevin Love. Presumably, he will continue to play more minutes. I think he's going to get, he played 15 after 7 in his first game. I think you probably see that get up around maybe 18 to 20 in this third game back. And I think I'm starting him by the next one after the All-Star break. Brooklyn side, you can keep one eye on Allen Crabbe. I do think that with Damari Carroll set to come back and Karis LeVert's minutes slowly increasing, that life for Crabbe is just going to get harder and harder on a daily basis. So stream him if you want, but understand that it's probably not going to last very long. Milwaukee and Indiana, not a whole lot going on there. I know there's some Wesley Matthews love floating around, but he's not really my type of guy, especially when he's not, second or third fiddle on a team. So feel free to watch him if you like, and certainly we'll keep one eye on the box score, but not something that I think you need to watch necessarily in real time. Washington, that's always a team I think worth watching in real time with all these new pieces. Does Jabari Parker bounce back? Jeff Green had an off game. Is his hip bothering him? He was actually playing really well, and he's been dropped in some spots. The waiver wire is stuffed right now, friends. There are dudes available as far as the freaking eye can see. I mean, if you go out there and make a stupid 2-for-1 trade. I mean, legitimately, just make a trade for the sake of making a trade at this point, because you can replace guys so easily right now. Do it before they all get snapped up. Get them all and trade them all. I don't care what you do with them, but get them on your team. I mean, take some of your top 50 guys, start pawning them off, because if you can turn some top 50 guys into top 30 guys and slot in some top 75s, that's a win for you. A top 30 and a top 70 is better than 2 top 50s. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true, because the separation between guys gets narrower as you move your way down the list. Detroit to Boston, obviously watching Wayne Ellington. He did not play well in his Pistons debut, but he took 7 3-pointers, and he's usually going to make 2 to 4 of those on a nightly basis instead of 0. I think he could end up being a really cool 3-point streamer. That's another guy floating around out there with steals upside. Good Lord, the waiver wire. It's unbelievable right now. Philly, New York. Actually not watching that much in this ball game. Good, a break. Houston, Minnesota. Not watching a ton in this ball game either. Derrick Rose, keep an eye on his minutes, but otherwise, I mean, Dario Saric now obviously in the starting lineup, so we'll watch that. But I don't need to see it in real time necessarily. I think I'm confident just looking at halftime if you have to. End of the first quarter, end of the second, whatever. If his numbers are slowly ticking up and he's getting the minutes, that's all I really care about. Memphis is playing again. If Conley missed Tuesday's game due to illness, I'd be a little surprised if he played in this one on the back-to-back, but you never know. Maybe every game will give us a little more information on the Grizzlies, so we'll ride this thing out. Miami, they're always a wreck. You're trying to mine gold in Miami right now when you got all these other guys popping up. Don't be bashful, man. There's dudes out there that are way more sure bets. And on the other side of that, Dallas, I love me some Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleba, and I still think Kleba's a guy to own for his blocks and 3-pointers. But Dwight Powell, a top 100, top 110 kind of center, you move him for some of these other guys with greater upside as well. Sacramento, Denver. Not much going on there. Golden State, Portland, back-to-back for the Warriors. This should be a nice test for them off a tough game against the Jazz. Not watching much in that ball game. And then Phoenix and the Clippers. Phoenix is fairly straightforward these days. We saw Rashawn Holmes have a better ball game last time out with no defensive stats, though. That's been weird for him. That'll likely even out soon. And then the Clippers are a real mishmash. They've got like 35 guys on the roster these days. Question is, who the hell is going to play and how well? Can Zubats bounce back? Does Beverly continue to put up rebounds and assists? Gallo seems to be the number one horse, basically. Lou Williams, he's doing more now with Tobias Harris out of town. Can Gilgeous-Alexander carve out more time? Garrett Temple, JaMychal Green. The list is too extensive for this team. So I'm not doing too much with the Clippers, adds or drops right now. Especially, again, when the trade deadline happened, you were watching the Clippers, we all were, to see if one of these guys could separate themselves from the pack. But as the last few days have elapsed, we're seeing better bets. And this maybe is the point to make before we segue into DFS stuff. What is the criteria that you're aiming for in these free agent pickups? I will say it's a couple of things. Number one, team needs. You're at the part of the year now where, especially in head-to-head, and you know what, in both. Forget especially in anything. In both. In Roto, you're looking for ROI. You want to grab stats in categories where smaller changes can make a bigger difference in your final total, meaning stats where you're maybe tightly bunched with a couple of other teams. You can push in front of them, gain a couple of Roto points without too many large-scale changes. And in head-to-head formats, you're looking for guys that are shoring up categories, provided you're in the playoff picture right now. You're looking to shore up 5 or more categories and get yourself over that hump. You just need to get to the next round. So that's phase one. Phase one is get the guys that are the right fit. And then phase two, right, because you don't want to just grab a bunch of top 110 guys who are narrow specialists and stuff. Phase two, get the guy with the greatest probability for a fantasy impact. and we'll put a barricade on that and say greatest probability of being a top 100 guy. And the third thing is the guy with the biggest upside who also has hopefully a decent chance to hit it. And that's where some of these other names are really starting to hit in because, with the Clippers, you look at a guy like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, for say. He has upside. If things clicked for him, he could be a top 60, top 70 fantasy guy. But from a probability standpoint, it doesn't seem that high, given the fact now that we've seen the Clippers play their new roster and basically play everybody. Whereas, take a guy like Maxi Kleber, who probably maxes out at about a top 80, so a little bit lower ceiling, but to me a higher probability that he gets there. So that's the type of stuff you're weighing. And then there's the obvious ones. Jahlil Okafor right now, because if they really want to play him 30 minutes a night, that's an obvious grab. If they're really going to play Valanciunas 22 to 25 minutes a night or more, I don't know how this is going to shake out, but if he's playing 21 minutes in his first game after 2 months, that augurs well for Jonas. So that's an obvious one. So you take the obvious ones, and then for the other stuff, you look for probability and you look for upside, and you weigh them against one another, and that's how you make your grab. Let's talk DFS. We got the contest coming up. It's today. 125 slots. We want to max it out. We haven't quite gotten to 125 yet. I think our high was 108. We had 102 last week. We've plateaued ever so gently. So let's push that thing back up again. And we need your help for it. The tweets, they're all over the place. The link is everywhere. If you need it, let me know. I'd be happy to send it to you. We got an email list built with this stuff. Top 20 slots pay out, a 20th of $375. It's $3 an entry for 125 people, so you get a 20th of that bad boy. First place gets a Hoopball t-shirt. Second place gets a coffee goodie bag from Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. The other 18 slots just get the cash. First and second place also get money, and then everybody else gets served a knuckle sandwich. That's right. I keep losing, so come take my money. It's going to be a lot of fun. And here to tell you how you can take my money while simultaneously telling me how I'm super close but can't get over the hump, which I definitely already know, is our good friend, Mike Apotria. Mike, what's going on?
What's going on, Dan? Good morning. I'll say it every time. And good afternoon if you're on the East Coast like me.
Yeah, I've gotten, I'm trying to break that habit of picking a time of day. Now I'm just saying, what's up? You see how I've dodged the problem? You want to give a shout out to somebody before we get into the DFS stuff?
Yeah, I think I need to give a shout out to my wonderful girlfriend right now. So she's getting ready for work. She knows I'm doing a podcast, and she has the courtesy to put on these nice, quiet boots because we have hardwood floors. You can hear from a mile away before she actually leaves the house, and then switch the boots before she gets into the car. I think that's a true warrior right there. She's always got my back.
That's pretty good considering you guys are in like negative 15 degrees out there these days, right? You guys in the middle of has the blizzard slowed down yet?
Oh, yeah. So the snow stopped. It's New England weather. It changes every other day. They said, when you want to move somewhere else, just move to New England. Okay. But it's like probably about 40 degrees. It's all melting. So now everything's slush. And by tonight, it'll be ice again. And it's a constant battle of trying not to slip down my stairs.
Outstanding. A wonderful time for all involved. So he's the great Mike Apotria at Mike Apotria on Twitter. And you know what today means. That means we're talking DFS stuff. It's DFS day. We've got the contest coming up in just a few minutes. I actually gave the details out a little bit earlier on the podcast, but how have things been going? Give us the update on how the contests have been running. I know I can't win, so don't even talk to me about that nonsense.
I can't talk to you about that because I got smoked probably harder than anyone last week. I had one of my worst weeks in the contest, but overall, I'm still, even when I lose these, I'm having fun. We had 105 people last week. 105 lineups. Some people do multiple lineups, but either way, it means we're only 20 off from filling this thing. It's possible. It looks like it's realistic. I think we could do it. And I always threaten to put in 3, but I think tonight's the night because there's 11 games. This is a night where you could take some chances. This is going to be a fun slate. You can go 100 different ways. And if I'm looking at this and see a few spots open, once they're about to lock, I might go for the 3-banger tonight.
You're an animal, Mike. I'm only putting one lineup in for one very simple reason, and that reason is that my one lineup is always 20 points out of the money, and I don't want to submit another lineup that's 20 points out of the money. It's as simple as that. Why would I do 3 that are not in the money if one is out of the money? So you got to get me over the hump, Mike. We're going to get there. Last week I did something weird. I'll admit it, and it didn't pay off, but we'll break it down anyway. Remember on the show last week we talked about the idea of like loading up on one game with a massive roll of the dice? Well, I did it. I played Patty Mills, Marco Bellinelli, and Davis Bertans, all from the San Antonio Spurs. I played Maxi Kleber. He was a letdown. Honestly, my greatest regret, and I know Marco Bellinelli's game was kind of a clunker, my greatest regret was Jahlil Okafor, who I finally trusted last week in a DFS lineup, and he took a wet dump on it. So tell me all the things I did wrong, because it's pretty clear the things I did right were Giannis was a good pick for the expensive guy. Drew Holiday was a solid pick at kind of the mid-round price. Josh Jackson was a nice, easy grab for a fill-in. And then 2 of the 3 Spurs actually worked out. And as it turned out, Jakob Poeltl ended up having an okay ball game. But, I mean, how do I stop having this, like, one gaping hole in my lineup? I can get 6 to 7 out of 8 every week, but I can't get all 8.
So I think you had the same problem I had last week, and it was the case of the right game, wrong players. So, you targeted the right games. You had a lot of your high-priced guys hitting there, but you played one of the wrong Spurs. The other 2, we probably didn't need Bertans at 34% owned. 22 is okay, but you played the wrong Maverick like I did. We both played Kleber, and Powell turned out to be the guy. We thought loading up on the not the Hornets. I'm sorry. Look at me. The Pelicans was going to be a good idea, but it was true that it was just Holiday, and that was basically it. You didn't need to target a lot of those guys. I think I played K. Williams too. So it's sometimes it's like you knew what you were going for. You just targeted the wrong guys in the game, and sometimes other guys just get hot, and that's the price you pay. And sometimes that's why I'm making multiple lineups where if you go with the other guys, like you played Kleber in one, well, maybe you go with Powell in the other, and vice versa, some other spots too. So like I played, James Harden on tonight, but Harden only put up 54, and if I went the other way in another lineup, I could have played like Chris Paul, who put up 40 for 5,000 less, I'm sure. So there's plenty of cases. I played Bridges in that lineup. Well, Jackson was the right guy. So I was on it with the right games, just the wrong guys in it. And actually part of your lineup had some of the same problems.
You had a couple of decent. I mean, Kenrick Williams ended up having a decent ball game at almost 30 points. He was relatively cheap in that one. You played Mason Plumlee, who had a solid ball game as well. So, I mean, I guess the question, Mike, is what if you and I played a best ball and you could have thrown Mason Plumlee in my lineup and I could have dumped Jahlil Okafor and you could have put Kenrick Williams in my lineup instead of Maxi Kleber, instead of Marco Bellinelli or something like that. Obviously, that would be a much easier game to play and everybody would have much higher scores. But how do I figure out how to get the right guy from the right game? This is not my thing. I can figure out what a guy's going to do over a longer period of time, or if there's an obvious fill-in. Those are the ones that I think are usually pretty easy to do in DFS. But on the night-to-night basis, if I'm not like digging deep into wild algorithms, individual matchups are sometimes a thing in the modern NBA, but there's so much kind of positional fluidity that you never really know the guy who's going to be guarding you all night long. How do you really isolate the right guys from the right game if it's more complex than just saying, this is going to be a high-scoring game? How do I get to that last point? Because to me, I think that's the thing that's got me right on the cusp here. I can do the easy. I can pick the expensive guys because I have a pretty good knack for when their matchups are going to be pretty good. It's easier to read. I can pick the backups because Kyrie Irving's out. It's pretty obvious that a couple of guys on Boston that are going to get the bumps and so on and so forth with that kind of thing. But it's the other stuff, filling out the other spots in the lineup. Like I know you picked Plumlee presumably because Paul Millsap was out and he'd been playing well, but like, how did you end up settling on Plumlee instead of a guy like Okafor? How did that decision come into play for you?
Plumlee was a lot cheaper than Okafor in this spot. I got to click on him real quick just to double check his price. Against Brooklyn, he was 4,400. So this was a spot that we're looking for centers against the Nets. I mention down here all the time. Plumlee, even though Millsap is out, he doesn't start power forward. Jokic actually slides over to power forward, and Plumlee spends a lot of the time in the paint. So I figured that, and the funny thing is he didn't even get his points off the rebounds, and that's what I was expecting. But it was just a smash matchup. So, with Millsap being out, I knew I was playing either him or Lyles. It turns out both were great plays. You could have got away with playing both of them in that night. And I probably had some Okafor, in other lineups. Like I just said, I did probably about 10 on each night, give or take. And I probably had some shares of Okafor. But what happens is you got to stay prepared. And when the news breaks, it probably broke maybe a few minutes before lock. I pivoted. I just looked at it, and it looked at cost price. I think Okafor was in a great matchup as well. But this is a near miss matchup. When you look at big men against the Nets, it's something that it's on paper every single game. And, to go back to your other question on the things I look for to target a lot of these guys, it comes down to like pace of play and all that too. But it's not always just like diving into an algorithm or analytics. Sometimes just looking at previous performances. Last night was a perfect case of coach speak. We saw that they said, I think the Sixers said they were going to throw Ben Simmons at Rozier and do their best to just completely shut Rozier down. A lot of people were on him with the Kyrie Irving news. So that's when I completely hopped off. We're not getting him for 4K. We're getting him for 6,900. Yes, he's in a great spot, but like I always said, you kind of have to evaluate the slate and look at the price ranges around that for other guards, ones that are a few hundred less or a few hundred more. And do you think they're in better spots than Rozier? If so, let everybody else eat the chalk and you go to them. But it's a lot. It's knowing like past performances. Sometimes you don't have that available. Sometimes it's the first time like rookies are playing a new team. So you have to look at what other players have recently done against them. So, for instance, if you're looking at like Mason Plumlee, he's a big, big body, big center. He's going to be playing alongside of Jokic. See how the Pistons did last time they played the Nets. See how other teams with two big bodies, two big centers down low, or two bigs that use their bigs for over 30 minutes played against the Nets, and you kind of get a decent sample size. You almost have to comp players yourself if you don't have a sample size at all.
Okay, pivoting now. We have a massive, massive card coming up tonight, so I don't want to spend too much time on last week's stuff. I want to spend most of our time going over the craziness that is the Wednesday before All-Star Weekend. I try to pack almost everything into this one. There's a couple of games tomorrow, and it's not a total lost cause on Thursday. I think, what do we got, like 2 or 3 games on Thursday? But everybody else is going tonight. I believe it's 11. Is it 11 or 12? It's 11 games tonight, right?
11 games. 11 fun games. Like I said, there's always, a few that we don't need to pay as much attention to. And then when I say cross off, you can like, I virtually cross it off because I play do or die almost, I guess you could say. I like to keep a core of 4 or 5 guys in all 10 of my lineups where I'm banking on those core guys hitting. But there's a few games that we're heavily targeting. There's a few games where we're going to get a few one-offs, and there's a few games I want really nothing to do with. So I'm ready to jump in it. I did plenty of research this morning, and I think we're good to go.
I know you did. So, all right, well, let's start with eliminating a few things. What are the games that you're basically wiping off your board before you even begin to narrow this thing down?
So with this comes your construction of your lineup. So this is going to be a kind of slate where you're going to be doing a lot of 2-for-1s. What that means is maybe targeting 2 guys on one team and 1 guy on the other. So you're not necessarily stacking the game, but you're getting a decent chunk of it. Or 1-for-1 vice versa. So if I'm not playing Embiid, I'm probably crossing off that Knicks-Sixers game because it's a little too crowded on that Sixers side. The only guy I'm really targeting on the Knicks would probably be DSJ, maybe Mitchell Robinson, but I think there's better places we can go for that price range where it's a little bit more reliable, get a little bit more upside too. So it's kind of going to go by construction. If you're not playing Embiid, cross that game right off. You don't even need to look at it. There's no point because you're just hoping that it becomes a blowout. Then the Knicks score 20 points less going into the fourth quarter, and we don't have to worry about playing anybody in that game. Another one you can do easily is the Rockets game, but we're kind of waiting on some news right now. I think we have Wiggins is questionable, but he participated in shoot around. So, it's a decent chance he plays, but he's still listed as questionable. But if you're not really playing Harden, I don't really see the point to really target that game too much. There's one secret sneaky play that I think who I'm going to get to that we're going to bring up later. And other than that guy is like a one-off, I wouldn't really touch it. Same thing with the Mavericks Heat game. I don't think we really need to go there. There's just better spots, and those guys, other than Doncic, don't have the upside, I don't really think, to take down a slate like tonight. You're going to need guys It's 11 games. We're going to need guys that can all put up at least 40 DraftKings points. Even if they're 4K guys, we need to know that they have that upside. Even if it's one out of every 10 games, I want to know that they have that upside to get me at least 40 DraftKings points, because we're going to need probably at least 350 to 400 to win our contest.
Yeah, it's going to be a doozy with the number of things going on today. So we're doing this podcast the morning of, and that's, I think, relevant because as the day progresses, we have all these game time decisions that are going to get either ruled in or ruled out. So are you even going to make lineups this morning, or do you find it better to maybe wait a couple more hours and then start to build lineups? Because you do so many, I guess maybe that eliminates some of the problem, but for someone like me who's putting together one, maybe two lineups max, if I build lineups around guys that don't end up playing, then I got to go back to the drawing board and redo a bunch of things later. Like, as we're talking right now, Terry Rozier actually just got ruled out. So both Kyrie Irving and Rozier are out for the Celtics, and that changes things considerably. If I had built the lineup around Terry Rozier, I'd be scrambling right now.
Yeah, and that's part of it, but you also know exactly where you're probably pivoting it to. So if you were playing Rozier, you're probably obviously going to play Marcus Smart or Jaylen Brown or somebody else from the Celtics side. So, and then you just kind of see where that leftover money would bring you. What was the last spot that you weren't feeling so confident in, and now you have a little extra coin to play with and upgrade it, and maybe you'll feel a little bit better about your lineup. You just kind of still keep in your core, same idea. I mean, if you're targeting Rozier, it's not because Rozier is cheap and he's taking advantage of the price tag. You're paying for Rozier if you were targeting him. I believe he's like 6,900 on tonight's slate before he got rolled out. Yeah, 6,900. So he's up there. There's really no savings on him. So now I'm happier. If you were playing Rozier before, you should be happier that he's rolled out, because you're still targeting the same thing I'd be targeting, which is point guards going against the Pistons. So right, now you just have to pick your other point guard.
All right, let's narrow this thing down and let's start building our lineup from scratch. Who do we know this is where I generally start, and you can tell me if I'm off base here. My first move is usually to go to the injury news after you've now checked off a few games from your potential list. Who's in, who's out, who's a game time decision? What are some of the spots you're looking for a potential cheap backup to throw into your DFS lineup?
So tonight, I think we're going to actually have a little bit of sneaky value. And anytime there's 11 games and it's, a couple days before the All-Star break, we're going to have guys late scratched and rolled out. So, we have Kawhi Leonard, who's questionable. That just popped up maybe about an hour ago, a little more. And that's going to drastically affect the slate, because that's one of the highest implied team totals going against Washington is the Raptors. So with him out, we already know Van Fleet's out. So Jeremy Lin just got traded there. He's 4,100. I think a lot of people will end up going there, and he's not a bad play. I'd probably go more with the starting caliber Kyle Lowry over there, but that's one news that we're going to have to wait and see on. We're going to be waiting to see on Mike Conley. That's, we want to know if we could play right again. 3,600. He was a huge value play last time. He's got a great matchup against Chicago. He's somebody that we can go right back to. And then Cousins, I believe, is ruled out due to rest. That's big. Now we kind of get these Warriors back to their almost normal usage before Cousins was back. Draymond seeing a little bit more rebounds. He's underpriced. I really like Draymond. I really like this game. I always mention targeting Lillard whenever they play Golden State. I like it better when it's in the Bay Area. But nonetheless, it's a great matchup. He gets up for this matchup. He's another guy I'm very high on. So I'm going to have definitely a little bit of a mini game stack involved in there. We're waiting on Chris Dunn. He's questionable currently. That's definitely going to affect that matchup over there going against Memphis. Zach LaVine's been balling. Markkanen's been balling. Otto Porter would definitely come into play with a little bit more usage as well. Satoransky on Washington questionable again. It doesn't mean that we necessarily need to go to the backup point guards. I don't think we need to do that, but it definitely gives a boost in usage to everybody else in the lineup. And I think the last one I'm really paying attention to would be Cedi Osman. He's questionable. He's been out for the past few games, but that might impact Nwaba's minutes a little bit, who's been playing steadily about 30 minutes here and there. And at 3,800, he's a sneaky value play where we have a lot of guys in this like 38 to 4,200 range that we can go. And, he's in a good matchup against Brooklyn. He's known to rebound as a guard. They give up a lot of rebounds. So I do think there's better spots, but he's definitely on the board. These guys, that's what I mean. I like to build multiple lineups because, when it comes down to that last spot and you're trying to decide between a $4,100 player, I see so many options on a tournament slate that can blow up. Like Nwaba can go out there and get 36 on any given night at that price tag. And then we're going to have his buddy right next to him, Marquise Chris starting center looking like with Kevin Love already ruled out. Ziz is probably questionable. I wouldn't be surprised if he sits. Shamit's 4K. He's been balling over there since he got traded to the Clippers. So we got a lot of guys in this price tag. And Rondae Hollis-Jefferson always flying under the radar at 3,900. He hasn't been doing anything lately, but Kruik's got ruled out already, so maybe he sees a couple extra minutes at power forward.
I am petrified of tonight's card. I'm going to be totally honest with you, man. I'm staring at all these names and thinking I don't even really know where to begin.
I got you. I got you with this one, Dan. You know what? We're going to do some. I'm sorry to cut you off. I think we should just do something completely different.
Okay, what are we doing?
Something that I normally don't do. Normally I say, what guys do I like? Well, I built a shell lineup. I built a core lineup, and it's going to change. I can guarantee that. With the news, it's going to break. With the news, I already did break. I didn't put in Smart in this one, and he's probably somebody, or Jaylen Brown I'd be looking at. Horford again, guys from the Celtics. But I'll tell the guys I have right here in my initial lineup, and this can be your base. That pick a few guys from here and start and build from. These are all guys I'm pretty interested in. Only one's really barring news, and that's Terrell Wright, or DeLon Wright. I'm sorry. And we're going to probably have that Conley news. And vice versa, there's guys not too far away from his price tag that you can replace him with. But I mentioned I'm very high on Lillard. I'm going to try to run him back probably in a couple lineups with a few Warriors. It would probably be Draymond. If I wanted to pay up, I'd probably go with Durant. Bogdanovich just seems too underpriced over there in that Denver game. Larry Nance and, like I said, Marquise Chris, one of those centers going against Brooklyn, is probably going to have a big game. Dario Saric already got ruled to be a starter again. Played 33 minutes last game. He's criminally underpriced at 4,600. Not the greatest matchup versus Houston, but I'll still take that all day. And then, like I said, that I wasn't joking when I said I was debating on that last spot for 4,100. I'm tossing it up between Shamit, Nwaba, one of those guys in there too. I think those guys are both in a spot where they have some decent upside. I'd probably lean Shamit because I feel more comfortable about his floor. But, we've seen Nwaba blow up here and there, but I'd want to know Chetty's out. So that's just like a nice foundation base of like one of the first lineups I made. I had another one where I went a little wild. I played Lillard. I think I played Lillard, Durant, and Harden in it. So I had a lot of cheapies. I had played a ton of expensive guys just to see if I could make it work. And I did. I made it work with DeLon Wright, Saric, Zubac, Shamit, and Lopez. So it's, a lot of people I think are going to, Zubac, that's the definition of a tournament play. Everyone got burned by him last time. Everyone's going to be salty, think he's going to play 12 minutes. He drew 3 quick fouls too, so we never know. This guy could get 25 minutes and he's going in a great matchup against the Suns, or 24 minutes even, and could double-double. So there's a few spots, and those are kind of more of the tournament plays you're going to hear. Not necessarily you don't need to go with them in cash. They're a little riskier. There's a lot of risk involved. We don't need to play guys like that in a cash lineup when you have guys like DeLon Wright if Conley's out, or Saric, who we know is starting. Those are the lock-in guys. If we hear that kind of news, ones that we know have a ceiling of 40, but still have that floor where we feel more than comfortable with their price tag getting paid off. Nwaba, on the other hand, like he's one of those guys that I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out there and gets 16, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 35. And if you're on the right end of it, you'll be winning.
See, that's the stuff that scares me every time we do this thing. I'm like, all right, well, I'd rather get this guy who I know is going to get me 22, and I don't have the stones to go out and say, well, screw it. This guy's either going to get me 8 or 40, and that's going to make or break my lineup. I feel like I've worked too hard on the other 7 spots to take the risk in that one, and that's why I'm never going to get over the hump. That's what's going to stop me every time.
Tonight that we're going to need a high score, so maybe tonight's the night you feel a little risky. Playing it safe might not do it tonight, unless you're playing it safe with like your last spot and you have 3,800 left, and you're plugging in guys like Durant, Lillard, and Harden, where you think all those guys can get you 60 points on tonight. That's a base of 180, and then you might be able to get away with it. Otherwise, we're going to need high score. So I'm going to be going a little riskier. No fault, because like I said, 2 of these lineups get entered into my Massfield GPPs too. I make 10 lineups. I pick 2 of the lineups of 2 of the 10. Usually, and I put them right into the contest, the hoop ball one. Generally, the completely wrong ones every time, but that's the way I usually do it. So I usually build them the same I would build for a large field GPP.
Well, heaven help us, Mike. This is the end of the road, I think, for me. I'm hoping I can get it. Maybe this is the one I'm hanging on by a thread. It continues here in my quest to actually get up and over the hump. I will be, as usual, texting you things throughout the day about how petrified I am related to my lineup and whether I think it's actually going to be worth using. And you can tell me if I'm completely out of my mind. Mike, as always, a massive thank you. Good luck this evening with your. You said you're going 2 or are you going 3 tonight?
Well, that is up to the listeners and everybody in the contest. If there's any open spot, I reserve 2. So, but if there's open spots, come close to lock. I'm just gonna. Why not fill this contest if we could? So I'm gonna throw another one in there. I'll tell a couple of my buddies. I'll throw another one in there. They probably won't listen to me, but we'll try. I'm going to try to fill this thing. I want this thing to get filled. I want to try to keep bumping this every week if we could.
I know.
It seems like it's a hard goal to reach, and we kind of plateaued a little bit. But I think we're ready to get over that hump, and a lot of it's going to come down to if listeners and readers and viewers are using these plays and finding these contests helpful in other spots. Like, did you venture on in DFS otherwise and play your own contests other than this one? And have you seen success using some of these plays or some of these strategies, or just hearing me and Dan blabber about it for a little while? That's something we'd like to hear. I want to know also what I can do differently. Do you guys like to hear more about something, less about something? Let me know. I have no problem adjusting the way I kind of look at things and do things for you guys. I just try to keep it as straight and narrow. That way we don't have a lot of time, and I am wasting it all right now.
Yeah, no, you're all good. I mean, that's actually a really good point, because I wanted to take this show, and that's something I talked about on the pod earlier this week. I want to take these shows and I want to stretch them into the Twitter sphere afterwards. So if you have additional questions for Mike, please do send them our way. I'm going to, as I did either, was it yesterday or the day before? I think I forgot one of the 2 days already, because that's how many things I've got going on in my head. When we put these podcasts out, I'm going to retweet them. I'm going to quote retweet them with basically a hashtag of something like overtime or question and answer. And if you have any questions related to the show or just in general, reply to that thread. And that way we can keep them all in one spot. We can have a nice DFS discussion today. Mike and I will be talking about it, mostly me saying, does this seem reasonable? And Mike will say, nope, don't do that. But then if you guys have questions that are less idiotic than the ones I'm asking, you throw it into that same mix, we'll get them all answered, and we'll have a nice little conversation throughout the day. So Mike, my good man, as always, a massive thank you. I'm sure I'll talk to you in the very near future. Have a lovely Wednesday. Good luck tonight.
Always a pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
That is the great Mike Apotria. We'll wrap up the podcast now with a quick moment here just to sort of get you all situated for the day ahead. You've heard the season-long breakdown. You've heard the DFS breakdown. Now a quick reminder to get into this contest we're talking about. We've got the links going out all the time. While we were recording this show, we sent out some links. Mike retweeted some links. It's just one click. That's really all it takes. You get into the thing, and you can pick your lineup right there from the contest homepage, and you set it all up, and then there's a button that just says enter, and it's $3. You get into the contest, it's $3. I have $9 left in my account. I'm going to tell you guys right now, so I'm going to be entering the next 3 contests, and if I win any of them, that'll buy me another month and a half of contests. That's all I'm trying to do here. I want to break even and keep having fun on a week-to-week basis. But many of you guys, like Mike, had 2 lineups that won a couple weeks ago. So he put in $6 worth of lineups, and he won $37. So he's set for a long time with this stuff. Of course, the big goal, first or second place. First place gets you a Hoop Ball t-shirt. Second place gets you a goodie bag from our boys over at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. It's outstanding, and you want it. You can also use a coupon over at HawaiianIsles.com. The coupon is HoopBall. So easy to remember. It's 15% off your coffee purchase. Go get some now. Let them know that you're listening to the podcast, that's how they got the coupon. That's how they found Hawaiian Isles. It's part of this partnership, and it's stellar. And I know at least a handful of you have definitely purchased this stuff, so you might as well save yourself 15% on your refill. The coupon code does not work at Amazon, I should mention. You got to do it at HawaiianIsles.com. You can also follow them on Twitter at HIKonaCoffee. Last thought here before we wrap things up on today's show. Plenty of things we're keeping an eye on, and obviously I'll be tweeting about those throughout the day and evening. But please do give a look over at our premium membership. That deal runs out in 2 days. I've been told officially now it's done at the end of Valentine's Day, so you've got today and tomorrow. It's $7.99 for the premium membership. Crazy low price right now. And with a coupon code, you can drop that down as low as $4.99 for the rest of the year. That's at hoop-ball.com. Click on the premium tab. Choose Go Premium. Have a wonderful Wednesday, everybody. Enjoy your DFS contests if you're into that sort of thing. Enjoy your season long if you're into that sort of thing. You probably are if you're listening to this podcast. Pickups, drops, they abound these days. This is the time, man. This is the time to get those lineups just so. I'm Dan Besbris, at Dan Besbris on Twitter. Once again, Mike Apotria, our guest today, at Mike Apotria, Apotria. Hoopball is the website. We'll talk to you tomorrow. That's it.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.